Hi, my name is Kirstie and I have been accepted onto Disney's Cultural Representative Programme, meaning I'll be moving, living and working in Walt Disney World starting next year in April 2025, and I still cannot believe it. Even at the point of recording this, after everything, I'm still in complete overwhelm and shock, and I am just so excited and happy and grateful for everything. So in today's video, I'm going to talk you through my YummyJobs interview, everything from receiving the email to heading down to Epping, the interview itself, and everything in between. So if you are thinking of applying for the CRP, or if you have an interview planned with Yummy and you're looking for some tips and advice, or just to figure out how it works to settle your nerves, then keep on watching because I'm going to share everything from my interview and hopefully it'll be of some help. So I submitted my application at the start of February, which is not too long before applications close. So for me, it was a couple of weeks before I heard back from Yummy. I think it was about 2 to 3 weeks from my application that I found out that I had been successful towards the YummyJobs stage, which was completely overwhelming. I hadn't been monitoring my emails because I had been very aware that I didn't want to stress myself out by staring at my phone and worrying about whether or not I had gotten through to the next stage. But I know that some people did worry about the emails going into spam or things like that. So after applying for the job, I did disable every spam filter on my emails, which was a good and a bad thing, if you can imagine. It was good because I didn't have to worry about not hearing, but I did get a lot of spam in that time. But yeah, I remember sitting, and I think it was quite late that I got the email. I think it was towards like 10 p.m. in the evening. And in the lead up after applying for the application, I had been stalking YummyJobs Instagram and just figuring out what was going to happen. I had watched a few YouTube videos and read some blogs and scoured Google looking for tips and advice and information on how long this stuff normally takes. And I had read it could take anywhere from 1 week to 2 months and anywhere in between. So after I applied, I think for me it was between 2 and 3 weeks to hearing back. But I did apply towards the start of February, which is when the applications do come to a close. So I guess that's kind of in my favour in a way, in terms of waiting. But yeah, I think I got the email quite late in the evening when I did actually get my acceptance email. And it basically just said, congratulations. The subject heading was an update on my YummyJobs application, and then I opened the email and it says, congratulations, we would love to invite you to a pre-screen interview in Epping in Essex. The interview will be 15 minutes and please let us know if you can make it. So I live in Manchester, which is in the northwest of England, and Epping in Essex is down south, quite far away. And I know that people apply from all over the country. So you've got Ireland, you've got Scotland, you've got Northumberland, you've obviously got people closer to Essex as well. But for me, getting down to Essex just for a 15-minute interview was very overwhelming. I remember staring at my email and thinking, is this even worth it? Because it's going to be so expensive to head down for that short time. But obviously I clicked the link and booked in my time slot and didn't think twice about it. So on the email was 1 day. There was 1 day only with time slots that you could choose to have your interview, and I know so many people couldn't make it to that 1 day and did email YummyJobs to see if they could do a different day, and they said no. But the reason for that is because Yummy want you to make an effort. They want to see if you are able to commute down to Essex and have a 15-minute interview with them, because if you can do that, then you're showing willing and you're showing that you are able to and willing to uproot your life and move to Florida if you get the job, and that is no small feat really when you think about it. So the interviews were on one day only, so if you couldn't do that day, you either had to change your plans, or if you really couldn't do that day, reapply next year. Thankfully for me, I was able to do that day. So when I opened the email and clicked the link, there was the one day available and lots of time slots. The time started from about 9 a.m. all the way through to 6 p.m. and they were in 15-minute increments. So 9, 9:15, 9:30, going up from there. So it was quite overwhelming, because obviously you are heading down for this interview and there's a lot of weight on it, and the interview was about a month in advance, I think. So I tried to choose the earliest time slot available. So I think for me, my interview was about 10:30. I get very overwhelmed very easily when it comes to interviews, and I knew that if I chose a later time slot, I would be stressed out. So I chose a nice early time slot and put it out of my mind until I had to worry about it. And I'm so glad, again, I chose a early time slot, and I'll get into that bit later. I decided to travel down via the train, which took a couple of hours. I got into Hammersmith and got on the tube towards Essex. I know a few people did stay in Central, but I wanted to be as close as possible so that on the morning of my interview, I could just get in and not have to worry about being late. Anyway, before my interview, they tell you to prepare just some basic things. So they say you can bring an item from your hometown, or like a personal item. They tell you to bring your CV and your cover letter and a photo of yourself as well. So what I did was I printed off everything that I needed to. A photo of me, the photo I did choose was from me at Disneyland, in my ears and everything. And I took my item down, and I was worried. No, before your interview date, there's about a month or so before you have to head down, and the email with So there was about a month or so between the email arriving and the actual interview itself. And on the email with the invitation to interview was a list of things that you should prepare and bring. So they advise that you bring your CV, your cover letter, and a picture of yourself, and an optional item from your home, which I would recommend that you do bring. This could be anything to do with the culture of where you live, or something important to you as a person, or your family, or your history, or your heritage, or anything. People tend to bring food or pictures or something important about where they live. So if you are worried about what to bring, have a Google, have a search, think about what your home means to you and anything important from where you live, and take that with you. Don't worry about it being stupid. So after I had chosen my day and prepared everything, I decided to get the train down to Epping. So I had to get the train down to Hammersmith and then the underground to Essex, which is where I decided to stay. I know a few people did stay in Central for their interview, but I didn't want to take any chances and risk being late or having to worry about not being able to get there. So I chose a hotel very close, or as close as I could, to Epping, which was in Essex, and it was fine. It was nothing fancy, but it was a nice little place to rest for the evening. I was so nervous that night. I went down on the Monday and my interview was on a Tuesday, and the absolute stress and overwhelm that I felt for this interview was unmatched, which is silly thinking back because it was literally just a chat, but we'll get into the actual interview in a moment. So the night of the Monday, I got to my hotel room with my suitcase, had a nice long shower, tried not to stress too much. I did go over some pre-planned questions that I had in my head, just in case they did come up, but I tried not to worry too much. But I tried not to worry too much about the interview because I didn't want to stress myself out. So after my shower, I got in bed, turned on the TV, and Grease was playing. So I snuggled in and watched Grease and fell asleep. In the morning, I set my alarm really early just to make sure I had enough time to get into Epping. I had my suit all laid out and I decided to wear a purple suit. I went shopping for outfits for the interview. The dress code was smart casual, and I didn't want to go too casual, I didn't want to go too smart, but I wanted to feel like myself during the interview because your personality during this interview is the absolute most important thing that Yummy are looking for and that you can get across. So obviously you want to show yourself but still be professional and still be, what they want. So I decided to wear a purple suit, not in your face purple, but like a lilac lavender suit with a black top underneath. I felt really good in this. I tried on different suits, different outfits, and plain black wasn't me, navy wasn't me. I wanted something colourful, so I wore a purple suit and I really liked that. I did minimal makeup in the morning, literally just the mascara and I think that's it really, just the mascara and my eyebrows, and off I went. So Epping is at the very end of the line on the underground, so you don't have to worry about missing your stop, which is really good. So I think in total I was on the tube for about 25-30 minutes, which is good considering some people from Hammersmith were on the tram for about an hour. So I remember sitting on the underground. I remember sitting on the tram and watching people get off stop after stop, and I was just there on my own with my suitcase and my purple suit, and it was just me that got off at Epping. And I left the station and had no idea which way to go, so I had to get my phone out and search for the right way. And it was fine in the end. There was nothing really to worry about. Before the interview, people did join group chats. On Facebook, there was a group chat that you could join. So before the interview itself, there is a Facebook group for everyone applying for the CRP, which I did join before the interview, but I didn't really want to participate in that because I didn't want to get my hopes up too much. But I was very aware that there was a group going on, and when you join the group, there's a group chat that you can join, which kind of gets narrowed down into sections. So there was a pre-screen group chat at this stage, and everyone was meeting at the Costa, about 2 minutes walk from the interview space in Epping. I decided not to join them because I needed time just to calm myself down. So I went to Starbucks, which was literally 5 doors down. I was in my purple suit with my suitcase. I walked in and someone said, "Are you here for the Disney interview?" And I said yes. So because the interview was on one day only, everyone in Epping kind of tends to know when the interviews are taking place. And it's funny because the whole kind of town is aware that everyone is coming for this job. And everyone was so lovely. Everyone was very welcoming. So I sat in Starbucks and I was quite flustered. It was very, very windy the morning of my interview. And there I was climbing this massive hill from the station with my suitcase with the wind blowing in my face. So I opened my suitcase. It was only a small one. I opened my suitcase and got out my hair straighteners and fixed my fringe in Starbucks and ordered a drink and just tried to calm down. I was fairly calm, but I was quite nervous just because I knew how important this interview was, because to even get through to the Disney stage, you had to get through here. So I left Starbucks about half an hour before my appointment. They do advise that you get there about 15 minutes early. So to take into consideration for the walking, I managed to get there about 15 minutes before my scheduled time. So as you're walking to the YummyJobs area for the interview, it's basically kind of like a shop layout with 2 windows either side and a door in the middle. You can see that there's a big meeting room in one of the windows where everyone was sat, and there's an interview room in the other window as well on the other side of the door. So I walk into the YummyJobs interview space and sign in. You just hand them your ID so they can see who you are. I asked to leave my suitcase and they were okay with that. And they guide you into the waiting room where it's basically just kind of a big table and everyone who is waiting for their interview is sat and they're just having a chat. And there is someone from Yummy in the room. It was Alexis who was in there with us. And they're just kind of observing what is happening. So you want to make sure that you are participating in conversation but not being too in everyone's face. You don't want to talk about you too much, but you want to talk about you enough that you want to do enough without doing too much, because they are watching you. So a few years prior, they used to do a group activity, and I think this sort of casual sit down pre-interview time has replaced that, where they just monitor you and see how you react with people and see how you vibe and just kind of keep tabs on what's going on. So after being in that room for a little bit and talking with everyone else, I was called in for my interview. And as I mentioned, there was an interview space in one of the windows. And I was guided into one of those windows for my interview, which I did feel very aware about because people were looking in during my interview, but I just shut it all out and focused solely on making a good impression. So I was called forward and I was talking to the room. She took out her hand and we shook hands, and I said, "I'm sorry if my hands are a bit sweaty. I'm a bit nervous." And she was just like, "No, it's fine, don't worry." And then we sat down and that was it. That was the start of the interview. It kind of started straight away. It was very, very informal, very relaxed. To be honest, it was more of just a conversation than anything. I was asked 2 questions, which was where I was from and why I wanted to do the job. I know a lot of people were asked more questions than I were, and some were asked less, but I was only asked 2 questions, and that did worry me for quite a long time after my interview. But the interview itself was lovely. We talked about me, we talked about what I like to do, who I am as a person, my hobbies, my experience very briefly. I talked about where I was from a lot and tried to just add as much of that into the interview. And I just tried to talk as normally as possible. I didn't want to come across like a different person. I know a lot of advice about this job is just to be yourself, and I went in there just trying to be as much of myself as possible, and that is the best advice I can give you. Talk like you normally talk. Try and add as much personality into the conversation as you can. So I would say the whole actual interview was between 15 and 20 minutes. I think it was a bit longer than 15, more towards 20, if not just longer. And it didn't feel rushed at all. It felt very chill. It was very natural. So the person who did my interview took control of guiding it, so I didn't have to worry about thinking of things to say or guiding it at all. Your interviewer will help you through the questions and will guide the conversation along. So all you've got to do is be yourself and answer the questions and show them and tell them why you are perfect for the role and show why you think you should get through to the next stage and ultimately the job itself. So yeah, after the interview was over, we stood up, we shook hands again. She said how lovely it was to meet me, and I just left the room, collected my suitcase and sat back down in the big area because I wanted to say goodbye to some people that I'd been speaking to. So I said goodbye, wished everyone luck, grabbed my suitcase and went outside the main building. A few people left at the same time I did, and we all just kind of debriefed outside, which was really funny because people were going in as we were sat outside talking, and we just kind of discussed what questions we were asked and how we thought it went, and discussed our items and just overall how we felt afterwards and how we think it went and just our thoughts going forward. So I was very aware that I had a train to catch, but I was invited back to Starbucks. And now that my interview is over, I did go back and in Starbucks we all just had a big chat, and there were people there who were waiting for their interview later in the day, as well as people like me who had just come from interviews. So I stayed there for about an hour or so. So after a little while I did change clothes and head back to the train, and went back into London to get the train back home to Manchester. So all in all, it was a very long day, but it was a very nice day. It was nowhere near as scary as I had worried it would be, but it was a very nice experience. So when I got home, I was picked up from the station by my boyfriend, and we just had a little debrief about how it went. And I had a little cry just because I was so overwhelmed that it had happened, and I was still quite worried that I had less questions than everyone else. So I was worried that I hadn't said everything that I wanted to say, and that there were things that were left unsaid, and that I hadn't made a good impression. But I think I was just so overwhelmed by how long of a day it was. I think it was like a 17-hour day for me in total, just with trains and an early morning start and just the general stress of it all, that I was just so overwhelmed. I needed just to let it all out. But yeah, that was my experience with YummyJobs. So I think if you're going to apply, just remember to take your ID, your CV, your application, your picture, your item, and just be yourself. I know that everyone says this, but honestly, they're just looking for your personality and your vibe to shine through. Your experience matters to an extent, but it's not the be all and end all. At the end of the day, you could have worked somewhere for 5 years or 5 weeks and it still has an impact on your application. The main things they are looking for obviously is retail and hospitality experience. So if you have that, it helps, but don't put all of that weight on those things. The main thing that they care about is if you are the right person, if your personality is the right match, if your vibe is what they're looking for, and how that shines through, because there's so many people, hundreds of people who have an interview on this one day, and you want to stand out, and the only way to do that is to let your personality shine through, bring an item that reflects who you are, and don't stress too much about it, because as someone who's an overstressor, it didn't help me at all. And looking back, I didn't need worry, because it went okay, and it was just a really relaxed conversation, just about who I am. And I can talk about myself, I can talk about where I'm from, and I think if you can just get through a conversation, practice talking about yourself and who you are, then you can do this. They will guide you through the conversation, they will guide you through the questions, they will help you give the answers they want to hear. They want to see your personality come through, and the way you interact with each other, and the way you present yourself. And if that lines up well, then I'm sure you'll do great. So it was only about a week after my pre-screen interview that I found out that I got to stage 2. That was the most stressful week of my life. So after my pre-screen interview was over, I did join all the Facebook groups and the group chats, and I was a little bit active on there. I wasn't as active as some people because I didn't want to get too invested, but I was active enough that I kind of knew what was going on. And everyone was stalking YummyJobs socials and trying to see what was happening. So after our interview in London, they were heading off to Norway for their interviews in Europe. So we were all very aware that it could be quite a long wait. And we were all staring at their social media, just trying to see what was going to happen. Yummy did post a few pictures from our interviews and a reel and just stories for the next few days. And about a week to a week and a half later, I got an email saying that I'd got to stage 2, which was the Disney HQ interview, which I am doing a video on, going through all of how that went. But yeah, it was a really nice experience. It was very relaxed, very full of positive energy. Everyone there is in the same boat as you, and they just want to help guide you through the whole process. So yeah, that was my experience at YummyJobs in Epping, and I hope this video was helpful for you. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments and I'll try and help you as much as I can. But I'm so excited for what is next, and I'm so glad that YummyJobs thought I was good for the role. So yeah, stay tuned for my next video about the headquarters interview with Disney themselves. But yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I hope that you follow along on this journey. Have an amazing day. Bye.